Well, good afternoon. I believe it is 12 noon, and we can call this meeting to order. Mr. Coley, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Caballero.
Present.
Commissioner Feinbaum.
Here.
Commissioner Gibson is not here. Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Herbert, absent. Commissioner Pickett.
Here.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I think we have all had an opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting. Can I have a voice vote for those in favor?
You need a motion.
I'm sorry. I have a motion for approval, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next official action is the excitement of the day, and that is the oath of office of Dr. Craig Pickett, Jr. Commissioners, the mayor has appointed and city council has confirmed the appointment of Dr. Craig Pickett, Jr. for a 7-year term as a KUB commissioner. I know I speak for all of us when I say how pleased we are to have Craig join the board. I would like to recognize Bill Coley to administer the oath of office.
Commissioner Pickett, if you will, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualifications
required by law
required by law
for the office of KUB Commissioner,
for the office of KUB Commissioner,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Tennessee,
the Constitution of the State of Tennessee,
the Charter of the City of Knoxville,
the Charter of the City of Knoxville,
and the bylaws of KUB,
and the bylaws of KUB,
that I do not have any contracts
that I do not have any contracts
or business interests with KUB
or business interests with KUB
that constitute a conflict of interest,
that constitute a conflict of interest,
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
and perform with fidelity
and perform with fidelity
the duties of Commissioner
the duties of Commissioner
without fear or favor,
without fear or failure,
to the extent of my skill and ability,
to the extent of my skill and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll take this if you'd like.
Next, I'd like to recognize Gabe for his introductions.
Thank you, Chair Simpson Brown. Commissioners, we'd like to today provide you a mid-year update on some things. So I've asked Mark Walker, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, to give you an operational and financial update. After him, Andrew Himaliski, our Vice President of Fiber and Construction, to give you a mid-year update on our fiber systems and how it's going. Next, Matthew Stinnett, Manager of Electric Systems Engineering, to give you an electric system update. And then Herschel Hall will be our finale. Herschel is our Manager of Water Systems Engineering, to give you an update on the water system growth. So I'll turn it over to Mark first.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, good afternoon. My segment of the presentation, I'm going to start out and give some highlights of our organizational performance for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. Then we'll talk about some of the financial highlights. I'll then talk about budget performance, where our new forecast is for how we'll end the year for each of our divisions. And then I'll close with giving you an update on our forecasted results for our financial and organizational metrics. So starting from an organizational perspective, as you know, staff has and other employees across the organization has spent a considerable amount of time developing the inflation response plan. And we did present that to the board at a workshop in November, had a follow-up presentation in January, which included staff's funding recommendations. We did share the overall plan and those funding recommendations with the board's community advisory panel earlier this month, and in general received positive feedback on that. We will be providing a full report on feedback to the board at next month's meeting. So next steps on that is our April financial workshop, where we'll review the information again and also the funding recommendations, and that would be followed by official action on some of those funding recommendations at the May and June board meetings. So everything remains on track with respect to the IRP. From a fiber perspective, we were very excited to move into Union County and Granger County this year. That we were able to actually accelerate the deployment into those counties through a $15.3 million grant we received from the state rural broadband grant. So we're excited about that, and things are going well with respect to the deployment in those areas. We did talk, I think, with you in December about this, but we have a large new electric substation, in-feed station, that came online in December that provides greater resiliency for our electrical distribution system and also flexibility. Matthew's going to be talking more about that here in just a few minutes, but in total was a $15 million project that came online in December. As far as wastewater, earlier this year we were very happy to learn of a grant from TDEC for $4.75 million to help fund a new wastewater pump station located in the Walker Springs area. We do a lot of activity and are constantly on the search for new grant opportunities. Here's one that came through, and that certainly helps the wastewater financial plan and funding of that project. From an employee perspective, really good news, and maybe not surprising given how committed our employees are to participating in the community, but the number of vol time hours for 2023 was over 4,400 compared to about 3,200 in 2022. That's an increase of almost 30%. So again, speaks to the, how important community involvement is to our organization and for our employees as well. Can't give a good organizational update without talking about solar a little bit. And our community solar project continues to do well. You'll recall that we actually started that back in April, began taking subscriptions in April of 23, and as of December 31st, we were 93% subscribed on that. And then we did set a new electric system peak in January, and during the cold and the snowy week that we had. The really big news there, though, is all of our systems held up very well. On the electrical system, outages were relatively low and probably lower than expected. So again, that speaks to the resilience of the system and to the board's support of all of our Century 2 programs, not only for the electric system, but the other systems as well. So those are some of the organizational highlights. From a financial perspective, start out talking from an operating statement performance, and a total earnings or net income for the first 6 months of the fiscal year was just under $56 million for all divisions combined. That did represent an increase of about $13 million over the same 6-month period last fiscal year. If you're looking at it by division, electric had $28 million, wastewater $18 million, water $11 million, and gas $4 million. Fiber did experience a loss of $5 million. Again, that was expected as we continue to start up in the rollout of that. So, but those were the values for each of the divisions. Transitioning to talk about from a cash budget perspective, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail, but high level, our latest forecast, we are projected to come in $54 million under the $1.2 billion budget appropriations approved by the board last May. And you can see from the slide, the biggest item there is wholesale energy being down about $42 million under budget. That is lower than expected rates from TVA. Now, TVA had a wholesale rate increase, but their fuel cost component has come down and really is more than offset the impact of the wholesale rate increase. So TVA is part of that. What we pay our natural gas commodity suppliers, commodity prices are less than what we budgeted as well. So that's the big reason for the $54 million decrease. But when you have those decreases in those unit prices for both electric and natural gas, that's going to impact what our customers pay, and that's a good thing. So when you see that go, the wholesale power cost and gas costs go down, you're going to see revenues go down as well, and our total revenues are about $43 million under budget. You'll recall back in November, we sold new bonds, $55 million for electric, $20 million for water. The good news there was that we sold them at lower than budgeted interest rates. We had budgeted 5% true interest cost. It came in about 4.3, 4.4, which just provides savings for our customers over the long term. And then from investment performance on retirement system assets, just to let you know, November and December were very good months for the financial markets. We ended up with a positive return on our pension assets of close to 16% net of fees for the year, and really the same for our post-employment healthcare trust fund, or OPEB, about 16% as well, net of fees. That was much better than the previous year, in 2022, when there was losses on assets. So that's good news. Okay, the next 3 slides are tables related to the budget, and I'll try and move through this fairly quickly, but each of these tables basically show variances or impacts, okay? So if you see a red parenthetical, that means over budget for that particular cost component or for the division. I'll draw your attention to the budget variance line so you can see each of the 5 divisions are currently projected to be under their respective budget appropriations. Now you'll note that wastewater is $1.2 million. We do believe there's going to be additional capital expenditures to the wastewater division that are not included in this forecast. So there is a decent chance that this may turn into a red parenthetical when it's all said and done. So we'll continue to monitor that over the next couple of months. And if it does, we will certainly be talking to the audit committee, but we may need to request additional budget appropriations for the wastewater division to cover that. But more to come on that. Looking quickly at the major cost components, again, the purchased energy and cost of goods sold from fiber in total $47 million under budget. When we look at revenues on the next slide, you'll see that those all have an impact on the sales revenues as well. O&M, $1.3 million over budget. We have a $213 million total O&M budget, so that's less than 1% for an increase there. And if you look at the individual divisions, it really traces back to the electric system. We had a major storm event in August of 2023, over $4 million in storm restoration costs. The good news about that is $3 million or 75% of those costs are reimbursable by FEMA. Now that often takes an extended period of time to get those dollars in. We just got our final segment of dollars for a 2019 storm event in here recently, so it can take some time. But the good news is ultimately we'll get about $3 million plus of that reimbursed. On the capital side, about $3 million under budget. It really traces to the water system, and we have about $5 million associated with our water filter project that we had planned to spend in FY24 that's now moving into FY25. So just a timing issue there on that. Debt service and taxes and the loan to the fiber altogether, those total up to about $5 million under budget for that. So that's our budget variance based upon our current forecast. Looking at it from a revenue perspective, as I mentioned, those impacts on electric, on the wholesale energy costs, gas commodity costs, you see it in revenues. So electric sales revenues down $21 million, gas down about $29 million. Good news, water and wastewater are both around $3 million over budget, and that is a continuing trend. And we talked about that in our IRP discussions, and that we had revenue adjustments in our plans because of greater than anticipated usage and growth on our water and wastewater systems. Fiber sales revenue down about $8 million. Again, that is, Andrew's going to touch a little bit upon this, but just, we've fallen short of our targeted goals for adding fiber customers for the year. On other revenues, so this is everything but sales revenues, electric's up about $3 million, Water's up about 5.5 million. Both of those are related to timing of grant receipts. For electric, at 3 million, we're getting the rural broadband funds in quicker than we expected in the budget. For water, that was part of a grant from the city and county to help fund the filter project. And we expected to get 5 million in FY '23. That is now coming in FY '24. So those are just timing issues. So bringing the two pieces together to look at the net impact from a cash perspective on the budget, focusing on the increase-decrease line, electric and fiber are relatively flat. Gas is down about $5 million. So with gas, last year, and this is true for electric as well, you just really see it here for gas, we over-collected in our rates our wholesale gas cost. So we have what's called a deferred accounting mechanism through our purchase gas adjustment. So it resets the rate so that over-collection of like $4.5 million flows back to our customers the next fiscal year here in FY '24. So, and we don't know what that's going to be when we're setting the budget. So that's why that is. That was actually a flowback of revenues that we received last year, an over-collection of cost. For water, on the $12 million, a relatively big number, but we've already talked about a lot of that. Well, it's increase in sales revenues, but that's about $3 million of it. The rest is timing on the grant and on the capital project. And then wastewater, about $4.4 million. Sales revenues are up about 3.6. So, and then O&M is down for wastewater. So that explains that one. Any questions on the budget before we talk about the metrics real quick? Okay. Last May, the board set 3 financial metrics for FY '24. The categories are O&M expense, cash generated from operations, and debt service coverage. So you can see what our forecast is. There's more green checks than X's, which is good. But we are, as we talked about on budget expenditures, projected to be over budget in electric and water and O&M. So hence, X is there for that. Cash generated from operations, electric is a combination of lower sales margin and the higher O&M cost. That brings that down. Gas, the lower margin results in that. And then fiber, it's the lower sales revenues that are driving that. But that is our forecast. There may be some slight changes, maybe 1 or 2 more green checks by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year, but that's based on our current forecast. And then on the organizational metrics, 7 were established by the board for the year. You can see those on the left-hand side, what those are. We are projected to achieve 5 of the 7, including safety, electric reliability, call center performance, DEI, and our Century 2 goals. 2 that we are projecting to fall short on. 1 is environmental stewardship. There's actually 4 components to that environmental stewardship metric. 3 of the 4 we will achieve, 1 we will not, and that's the number of homes weatherized. We set a target for the year of weatherizing 250 homes. We are going to fall short of that. We're projecting around 170 by the end of the year, and that's really due to inflationary cost on materials. It just costs more to weatherize a home than it has in the last several years. So that's the reason we'll fall short on that one. Fiber service availability, our target for the year was by the end of the fiscal year, we'd have fiber service available to 90,000 homes. We are going to fall a little short of that, and Mr. Himaleski is going to touch upon that here in just a minute. But that concludes my remarks. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Good? Okay.
Perspective, we've installed a little over 500 miles of fiber to date, putting our total at a little over 1,500 miles across our system. You can see there our goals for this year was 775 miles of total fiber construction, 75 of that being underground, the majority of that being aerial. I'm confident in our our aerial progress, and I feel like we'll meet that goal. On the underground side, we are lagging a bit there. I'm going to talk about some of those challenges we faced here in just a moment. On a positive note, we've added over 23,000 addresses to our serviceable area. So we're now sitting at almost 50,000 serviceable addresses across our service territory. So a big milestone there, and we'll continue to grow in that space. The map on the right, you can see the green is really where those serviceable areas are, and blue is where construction is. Mark had mentioned those grants we've gotten in the Union and Granger counties. We're proud to be able to open those up here in a couple weeks. We've opened some up already last calendar year. So you're going to continue to see those grow, and that's a significant part of those rural counties getting opened up here in the next few weeks. So we're excited to be able to open those. As Mark mentioned, we're going to fall a little bit short of that 90,000 serviceable address goal. We'll be around 68,000 addresses by the end of this fiscal year. And that really falls under two categories of challenges that we faced. I mentioned the underground construction. The other one is something we talk about as multi-dwelling units. We'll take a deeper dive of what multi-dwelling units are and how they're presenting a challenge for us. But ultimately, I want to just talk high level. There's about 25,000 addresses that fall in this category that we have serviceable fiber at the property line, just not the individual units on the property. So we'll take a deeper dive to that in just a moment. On the underground construction side, we bid 75 miles of underground construction in May of last year, awarded that. We worked with a contractor, got them mobilized, tried to work through some challenges, but ultimately they were only able to install 3 miles of fiber by November. They challenged getting the workforce in place to meet our pace demands, but our procurement department did a great job negotiating with them, change ordering that down, putting a bid back out, and awarding to a new contractor in December. Since December, we've already installed 9 miles of underground fiber. So we feel like we're back on pace, but the result in that is some of those addresses we thought we would get later in this fiscal year are going to move a little bit into early parts of next fiscal year. Multi-dwelling units, you know we love our acronyms at KUB, so we like to call them MDUs, but here's an example here of an apartment complex, but MDUs can be apartments, condos, townhomes, strip centers, strip malls, but ultimately it's things with a shared space, so shared walls, multi-level, things like that. So what we do is we come in and work with the property owner, work with them to get an agreement to say, you know, we want you to come serve this area. We work through a design process, make sure they're in agreement of how we're going to install that fiber to the individual units, and then we kick off our construction process. And that's where we really start to see some of those challenges of a lot of times we have to get into each unit to have access to install that fiber. And that's a lot of coordination, a lot of challenges, whether it's a maintenance person we're trying to get to allow us in those, or a condo association that's coordinating access with those individual property owners. But those are a lot of the challenges of where we're trying to get into those units. We're working with the common space of the attics. We're working to get through chases to get vertically on some of these buildings. But ultimately, a lot of times we've got to get that access. So what are we doing to overcome some of these challenges here in this MDU space is adding and dedicating resources specifically to these areas of challenge, specifically in the MDU space. So we've got more construction crews that are available to install the underground portions of this and inside wiring. We're also working with our sales and marketing group to add resources to focus on the agreement side of those things, so kind of on the front end. And then we're getting a little creative. We're looking at what are those different installation methods, or what are those different scheduling methods. Instead of saying we need access to the whole building, can we get access to, you know, the 3 buildings in this one quadrant, or the three units within this quadrant. So we are really trying to work with, whether it's the property owner, the condo association, of being flexible, getting there at different times of the day, really thinking outside the box, figuring out how we can do that. But again, I just want to emphasize that's about 25,000 addresses that are in this bucket of work that we're working through to get better at and be able to release those addresses. So an important factor here, outside of just getting the services addressable, or addresses serviceable, would be to to gain those customers and see that customer growth. So you can see we're at almost 7,000 customers today, and we had a very positive first quarter of this fiscal year at over 75% growth. That trend continues to be positive. As Mark mentioned, we are a bit short of that goal, where we will be a little bit short of that goal this fiscal year. I think our initial goal was 14,000. We're projecting to be closer to that 10,000 mark. But the trends are positive. We're seeing more communication, more feedback in those open forums. So whether it's social media, whether it's meetings, different events, we're seeing a lot of positive feedback from those areas, and we're seeing that inertia start to move towards the positive trend of sales forecast. On that note here too, we just continue to work with our marketing efforts. We're seeing very strong brand awareness, very strong brand loyalty, very positive customer service results in those types of feedback. So we're very confident in the sales forecasts moving forward to continue to trend positively. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Great. Thank you all.
Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Here to give a little bit of an update on the side. 2023 was a busy year. 2024 is also off to a good start, and I'll explain a couple of events there. First program I want to talk through is kind of building off what Andrew mentioned around fiber. I like to say I'm kind of that equal but opposite side of the equation. It's not just broadband and everything, but we're also doing a lot on the grid side. And really, this fiber is enabling us to really modernize our electric system. So I want to talk through what I'm going to call FLISR. Won't use acronyms, I'll just make it a word. But really, that's a self-healing grid, right? So that's one of those where, the devices we're installing out in the field are, talking to each other, sectionalizing the circuits, and minimizing the impact to our customers, right? So, with this, the map in the center of the screen probably looks very similar to the fiber deployment map. And that's intentional. We're kind of lagging behind the deployment of the fiber as it goes out into the field. And from a overall target goal, our phase one, we're trying to reach around 1/3 of our customer base by the end of next fiscal year. So with that meaning that, just under, I think it's around 60,000 or so, or 70,000 rough numbers of customers. So when we start deploying our FLISR or automation, it's our goal to try to sectionalize our circuits to where no more than 250 or 300 customers are out at a single, distribution outage. And that's a keyword, distribution. But that's something that we're really proud of on the fiber side. Right now, to date, we've got around 200 or so devices out in the field. And, since we first started testing this technology back in 2017, we've saved over 10 million minutes of interruption to our customers. And kind of put that in perspective, that's about 1/2 of a year's worth of our reported minutes. And fun fact for me, but since the start of the fiscal year, we've already saved over 2 million minutes of interruption. And again, that just continues to kind of compound as we progress further and further. And we've almost already doubled our deployment this fiscal year since we've kind of been following behind the fiber side of things. And our long-term plans, we plan to have another 1,000 more of these devices out on our system there. So a lot of work remaining to go, but off on a good pace there. So next, I want to kind of follow up on something that Mark helped set me up with. And we brought online a Western Avenue substation. So for us, this was a really big deal. If you recall, John Gresham actually mentioned this during this December update. I think it was just days after we put that in service. And, for the electric side, this is a major accomplishment for us. This is our 10th delivery point with TVA, so it was a big project for us. And it really helps add, additional capacity to our system, and I'll talk why that's important. But more importantly, the operational flexibility. And I've got a great example I'll talk through in a couple slides on that. And these projects, it may seem that all of a sudden we just kind of put these, projects in service. That's not how this works, right? Mark mentioned the large investment that we made from a financial standpoint, but you also had over 100 different KB employees have a hand in this role or in this project to ultimately get to that magic in-service date back in December there. But more importantly, that last bullet point is one that I want to highlight, and I've actually got an example that, will emphasize that service reliability and system flexibility that I'll talk about. So next, this, I talked about 2024 being off to a good start, busy start, I should say. And actually, this is why we're the first in-person meeting here, is because back in the week of January 15th, we had a big snowstorm, a severe weather event. And that was one that, as you can imagine, can take a toll on the electric side, or all the utilities. And for us, Mark mentioned it, we set a new peak. Well, we didn't just set that once. We broke it again the next, couple days later. All right, and that's a big deal for us. But, more importantly, when we get into these situations, we're working really closely with TVA. Over the nearly week-long event of the weather, TVA did a really good job of managing the bulk electric system. But also, I'm pleased to say that our, system, handled things very well, remained very stable. As Mark mentioned, minimal outages, and that's a good thing. So, having stations like Western Avenue come online just continue to kind of expand and add more capacity onto the system there for within our electric system. Next, I wanted to kind of bring one example into play that helps put in perspective around all of our efforts of Century 2. All right, you may hear about us talking about large investments or programs or projects, but what does that really mean on the electric side as a true event? And I've actually got a video here that I'll talk through. This happened at our Lonsdale substation. So this is a separate, different delivery point with TVA, but this is always a risk to play a video. And we'll call out, be watching in this area here. So, okay. Obviously that was not supposed to happen, right? So keep in mind, this was the week prior to the weather event. That timeline's important, and I'll get back to it. When that happened, nearly 20,000 customers immediately went into the dark. All right, and that ranged from customers near West Knoxville, South Knoxville, downtown, including this building here, right? So, that has a huge impact when events like this happen. Now, when we, obviously we were able to respond to that very quickly, and having stations like Western Avenue quickly come into play, we're able to dispatch and move that load around. And I think we had all our load picked back up within 5 minutes. And that's really before we even, even start rolling a truck that direction, right? And that just really highlights the value of Century 2. This particular station was on our plan to get upgraded as part of the Century 2 substation program. It was scheduled for 2028, 2029 in our long-range plan. And again, it's one of our larger projects there. But, something along an instance like this can just have a tremendous impact to our customers. So when we go into these substations, we're replacing all of the oil field breakers. That's the kind of canister style you're seeing there, and we're replacing them with either a vacuum style or a gas insulated new breaker that has a little bit, well, one, it's a little bit more contained than what you just saw there, right? And again, the emphasis of Century 2 for these programs is, when events like this happen, like we've got to respond. But the way that our system is designed, with the redundancy and resiliency and contingency built in, we're able to quickly recover from that. We're not typically scrambling to, just get the lights back on. We're able to kind of put this in a controlled environment and work through and develop a plan to where we can replace this. I think this breaker in itself is scheduled to be replaced next month. But even as a result of that, our system, that particular station still remains very stable, serving, reliable service to our customers there. And I bring this all back to the weather event. This happened the week before the severe weather, right? Having Western Avenue immediately played, dividends to that, just extremely helped carry some of that additional capacity even when we were dealing with something else there. So with that. This was during a week of, extreme rain. So we believe that there was just kind of a loose connection and water kind of got into it. So when that water kind of got inside, it just kind of shorted itself. So, good question. Okay. Any Any other questions?
Good afternoon, I'm Herschel. I'm here to provide a mid-year operational update for the water system. I'm going to touch on our Century 2 progress. I want to talk about how we're utilizing technology to improve our ability to operate, maintain, and basically oversee our water system, the water. On our MBW filters project. Talking about Century 2 programs, one of our most well-known programs, I guess, is pipe replacement, basically replacement of older pipe materials like galvanized and cast iron with newer materials like ductile iron. To date, we've replaced nearly 225 miles of that older material with newer materials, again, predominantly ductile iron. That reduces breakages, and I'll pivot back to that as we talk about the cold weather event coming up. MBW upgrades, plant work certainly is another component of our Century 2 program. Kind of borrow some phrases that Matthew used. The filters project at MBW will allow us some additional operational flexibility and redundancy to operate the plant. Allow us to backwash less often. If we need to take filters offline, it will give us some flexibility to do that. I really want to hit on today a lesser known component of Century 2, and that's how we utilize technology, again, to monitor system performance. Our SCADA system, I'm guilty of using a lot of acronyms, so I apologize. Our SCADA system allows us to better understand how much water we're pushing out from the plant into the distribution system. So we know how much water we're making, we know how much water we're supplying. We can monitor our tank levels to determine if we've got breaks or issues inside the distribution system. We can further augment that information with our DMA technology. This is technology that came out of Europe, I guess was made popular probably in England, but we can track movement of water through our distribution system using a series of DMAs, which it stands for District Monitored Area, or I'm sorry, District Metered Area. We further augment that, the last piece of the puzzle is customer consumption through our advanced metering infrastructure. That kind of presents a full picture of how the water goes. We know how it leaves the plant, we know how it moves through the system, and then we know how the customer utilizes it. Now, transition now to using that information during the cold weather event that happened in mid-January, and we can see how the system performed. We kind of knew from past experiences that we might expect a problem as that cold weather hit, so we were monitoring temperature and operational status. The red line here is customer utilization, customer consumption. The blue line is actually what's coming out of the plant. Our gray line, if I can hold my hand steady, the gray line is temperature, minimum daily temperature. So you can see as temperature began to drop on the 13th, flows began to rise. We actually hit a low on the 17th and again on the 21st, and so we knew that there was a direct correlation between the falling temperatures and the increased flows again coming out of the plant and usage by the customer. So once we had that customer information, we were able to follow up with folks, actually visit sites, call people, and let them know and question them about increased water usage. We actually were able to identify 77 private leaks through that. So we could not have done that without the AMI technology. Again, the SCADA system allowed us to better understand what was happening at the plant. So that technology really presented a clear picture. And we expected this to occur. We knew from years past that this would probably occur, but 20 years ago, we would have never been able to do this. 10 years ago, we certainly wouldn't have had the technology to do this, especially with the DMAs and the AMI, the customer metering. So let's talk a little bit about how the system performed. Despite the number of breaks that we had, we did not have any major disruptions. We did not have any pressure issues or water quality issues during the cold weather event. Although we did experience nearly double the number of breaks here in 2024 compared to what happened in Winter Storm Elliott in late December, or in December of 2022. 60 breaks compared to 36. So we were able to get those repaired in a timely manner. Hats off to our UGC folks in getting those repaired in what I would consider less than ideal conditions. You remember how cold it was. I think we had about 9 inches of snow out at our place during that event. So it's a significant weather system, and the system held up rather well. With that, oh, I did want to make mention that system flows returned to normal towards the end of January. MBW filters update. A couple of things I want to point to in the artist rendering. Wash water tank, filters building, and our backwash tank. 3 components there. And again, this project provides additional redundancy and flexibility to our treatment capabilities at the plant. We received $25 million in ARPA funding for this project, half of that coming from City of Knoxville, the other half from Knox County. We're still on track to finish this project on schedule. Should finish up next summer 2025. A couple of project milestones, and I'll point to this in some pictures I've got coming up. The backwash tank is now complete, and you'll see the foundation for the wash water tank in the coming photos. They expect to start construction on the wash water tank in the coming weeks. This is an actual photo from a drone photo, aerial photography. You can see City of Knoxville in the background, John Sevier Bridge there, and this is your backwash tank, pre-stressed concrete tank. This is the foundation for your wash water tank, and this is where the actual building will sit, if you remember the rendering. So a tremendous amount of earth being moved out there, a lot of effort, a lot of energy being expended for this project. And this is obviously looking towards downtown. This shot is looking back towards MBW plant. Right here, again, the backwash tank here, your foundation for your wash water tank would be over here, and your filter building and right here. What I really wanted to show here was the number of parts and pieces and fittings that actually go into building this. You can see all of the red oxide primer on some of these large ductile iron fittings here and pipe. Got some other materials here, more ductile iron here, but what I really wanted to stress here is just the number of parts and pieces required to build this new filtering system.
Did all of this get purchased before there were shortages, or has this just we've been accumulating this in the last few years? I know it's been so
Supply
hard to get.
shortage are not as bad on pipe as they were. Now, some pipe sizes, some pipe materials, there's still some shortages, but by and large, a lot of the pipe shortages are almost a thing of the past. Now prices have increased certainly, but the delivery times are almost back to normal. You will find electrical components there's no change. There's still generators. Yeah, generators are sometimes a year out, 2 years out. There's still significant delays on electrical components. But fortunately, pipe has to some extent gone back to normal. That concludes my presentation.
Any questions for the staff? All right, I'll move on to the next thing. Commissioners, as you know, Project Help is a big part of our program to help folks get through the winter months in particular with their heating bills. And so the campaign just wrapped up that we do annually with our partners. And I've asked Anna Freshour, our team lead and our customer counselor lead, to give you an update on this year's campaign. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Gabe, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I just want to give you an update on Project Help and some things that we've been doing this past year to promote the campaign. Project Help started over 40 years ago as a partnership between KUB and CAC. It helps low-income customers who may be experiencing a crisis on their energy bill, and it doesn't just purchase electricity and natural gas. It'll purchase whatever that customer's heating source is. So that's really helpful for someone who may have propane or something else in their home that they can still heat their home. Project Help is managed by a board of local community members. KUB and CAC do have representation on that board, so we do continue to work really closely with them, and that we speak to them all the time about what's going on. So the board for Project Help works really hard to look at what's going on in the community. They look at what funding may be available for utility assistance, kind of what the customer needs are at that time, and that they take all of that information, and every year they set the amount of dollars that are available to assist customers through Project Help, the maximum benefit amount that someone may be able to receive, and they also set those income guidelines. So income guidelines, depending on the climate of the community, could change from year to year. We typically, if you know about the low-income heating and energy assistance program, we are above that. So it kind of, Project Help's able to meet the need for someone who may not qualify for other assistance. Since 2019, we have helped over 1,900 families. You can see that from 2020 to 2021, there was an uptick in Project Help assistance. This is really due to, we were in the pandemic. During that time, there wasn't a lot of, people were out of work. There wasn't a lot of assistance dollars other ways, and Project Help was able to step in and help a lot of people during that time. From 2022 to 2023, there was a decrease. There was a lot of money in our community during that time, whether that be federal money, the dollars that KUB used to assist customers, and all of that. Project Help did not have to step in as needed quite as much. We do expect 2024 there to be an increase. There is not as many dollars in the community through the government or anything else, so we have Project Help sitting here and we'll be able to help as needed. There are many ways to contribute to Project Help. We talk a lot about what we do, but how do we get that money from our customers? You can actually go on your bill and sign up to have a recurring monthly charge for whatever amount you choose. So we have a lot of customers that it just is a line item on their bill. They pay it with their utility bill, and that $1, $2, whatever they choose to give goes to Project Help each month. We also have many one-time contributions. Several times a year, we send out bill stuffers and we send out information in the connection, and people can send back a check with that to make a donation. They can also request the one-time or the recurring monthly pledge. And I'll make note that this past year when we did the bill stuffers and the connection, we had a very large response to that. That is new customers who are wanting to make donations, as well as people who have been making donations, increasing that. Some from $1 to $2, even $5 to $10 each month. So there was really good response from that solicitation this year. We also have coming up in the future, we're really excited about our guest pay donation option. So I know I don't write a lot of checks anymore, so I'm sure that most people don't. And currently, if you are a non-customer, to make a donation, you have to mail in a check. We had no other options, and we felt like we were missing a segment of people who may want to donate, that there wasn't a way for them to other than a check. So we will have the ability for a customer or a non-customer to log into the website and actually go in and put in their credit or debit card information and make a donation. That should be ready to go by next year's campaign. If it's available sooner, we will promote it at that time and let people know that it's available. And then we also have our annual campaign with our partners. We partner with Food City and Home Federal every year. They collect donations for us at their stores and their bank offices. And then we have WIBK, WVLT, and the Knox News as our media partners who promote the campaign along with KUB. This year, the campaign wrapped up a couple weeks ago, and we raised just over $48,000 during a 4-week period. You can see that is down around $10,000 from last year, but an entire week of that is when we were at home. We weren't going to the grocery store because of all of the snow. So it's pretty great that even missing an entire week of our campaign, basically, that we still raised $48,000. So we're pretty excited about that, and we thank all of our partners, especially Food City and Home Federal, for assisting with that. So every year, it's not just Food City and Home Federal for asking for the donations, but we also promote the campaign in a variety of ways. That's from WIBK doing radio spots to the Knox News doing ads in the paper, and then also WVLT doing commercials and promoting it during their broadcast. And during the week that we were at home, they had the awareness that we're all at home, so they actually did some extra promotion as during their broadcast and as commercials during that week. But not only do they promote, but KUB does a lot of promotion during the campaign as well. We do social media campaigns, we do paid advertisement with the Knox News and digitally as well, and we were able to get over 50,000 impressions through those paid advertisements, and that's where someone actually clicked on the link to see what Project Help was about. We also do a lot of social media advertisement. You can see that on the far left, and from that we're able to target zip codes as well that in our service area, and we got over 127,000 impressions from those. So the word about Project Help is getting out there, and you can tell from all of the different types of advertisements we have, the logo or the images and the feel of them all stay the same so that we can create people to recognize Project Help. So we want to keep it similar as it's going through the different platforms of promotion. And all this, Project Help really does make a difference. Who receives Project Help really does vary. It could be a single mom who's having childcare cost issues. It could be a couple or people who have been impacted by medical bills. But it's also people who have unexpected home repair expenses. So we had a customer who had an unexpected home repair expense. She had a major water leak. So Project Help was able to step in after she had to pay to repair the water leak and assist on the bill. And then KUB was also able to help on the leak adjustment side and making arrangements to get the bill paid and set up payment arrangements. So Project Help really does help a variety of individuals. But that is all I have. Do you have any questions?
Do we use funds from one of our different
funds in terms of like if someone had a leak like that and they're struggling so much, like is there a way that we also help pay, or are we just giving them a plan on how to reduce that bill?
Not to pay the bill.
Yeah, we do have our Water Savers program that we contribute
sorry?
dollars for, Water Savers.
Okay.
And so with that program, it does allow for a customer that qualifies by income to have a toilet replaced or a major or small leak in their home. That work be completed by a qualified contractor, and all that funding comes from KUB.
So for example, if this person had a $2,000 bill, I don't know, but for a leak or something, and the bill is that's just the water, not all the other stuff, are we able to forgive part of that, or how do we do that?
So likely in the instance of this customer, they might have gone ahead and done the repair. They weren't in process because it was an emergency. So it wasn't something that they had gone to. CAC is our partner for Water Savers. So they likely didn't go to CAC when the repair needed to be done. They took care of that repair. So we don't retroactively go back and do water repairs. But in that instance, knowing that the repair needed to be made, it was done by that customer. Any additional wastewater charges that were above and beyond what that customer would have typically had, we do have a credit program that assists customers in need in that situation. And so that is what Anna has spoken of, is kind of making sure that they didn't have additional cost from us as a utility as a result of a leak that they didn't have control of. And then additionally, we likely would have set up a payment arrangement for that, any water use, because there's not a credit on that portion for her to pay overtime.
So I'm not 100% clear. So if my bill is usually $300 and it came in at $2,000,
anything between the difference of the 300 and 2,000 that was associated with wastewater,
Right.
we would create a credit for that customer, and they would not be responsible for paying
okay,
that portion.
but the part about the water they spent, they do have to. Okay,
Correct,
got it.
because we would have provided that water to their home.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, I'm excited to introduce Jamie Davis, Senior Vice President, Chief Fiber and Technology Officer. Dang, I'm in trouble now. To recognize an extraordinary event by one of our employees that truly saved some customers in a bad situation. I don't want to steal any thunder, so I'll let Jamie give you the details of this extraordinary event.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We've long said that our employees are our best asset, and it's my privilege today to be able to share a story and honor one of our employees who really kind of went above and beyond the call of duty. Austin LaQuire works in our fiber engineering department as an inspector and splicer. Austin's from Blount County, graduated from William Blount High School, and then served our country in the Marines before he ultimately came to work for one of our in-home fiber installers, FICOM, and we noticed what a great employee he was, and so he joined us last May as an inspector and splicer for us. But on January 25th, right after all the fun ice storm and everything else, Austin was in the House Mountain community, and I'll share with you on slide here. Austin unfortunately came up upon a scene of a head-on collision that had just occurred. He arrived on scene very early. He immediately sprung into action. He first assisted the driver in the pickup truck that you see on the top screen. Obviously, the driver was understandably visibly dazed and confused. He helped assist her out of the vehicle, get her away from harm's way, and sit her down on the curb. He then turned his attention to the red sedan there that's down off the road, and you can see the portion on the right. Both airbags had deployed. The car was smoldering at that particular point in time. He first gets to the driver, which ended up being a 17-year-old male driving it. He too, dazed and confused, inability to kind of communicate, as you can imagine. In that regard, Austin was able to ascertain the young man was okay, short of a couple of scrapes and cuts from the airbag deploying, but was really kind of unable to communicate if anybody else was in the car with him. So Austin, doing the right thing, took the opportunity to go around the car and looked and found his 14-year-old brother, who was in the other side of the car, who at that point in time was really in a lot of pain, and upon inspection had suffered from an open compound fracture of his leg. And so his leg was broken pretty severely. Keeping a cool head about him, he instructed and kept the other brother from getting the young man out of the car, and left him there in the car as to not complicate the wound or the injury there. A move by which the paramedics obviously tipped their hat to Austin and said he did the right thing in that particular regard, staying there with the boys, keeping them calm. He then noticed that the car was starting to smolder from the front, and again, I'm very impressed with this point that he even knew to do this. Went back to his truck, got his fire extinguishers and a pair of pliers, and cut the battery cables on the car to reduce the risk of fire. Once again, getting accommodation from our first responders and paramedics that said that was an excellent approach to that. The good news is this story has a happy ending. Both boys are doing fine. The younger boy did have surgery. Needless to say, the mother of the young men is Austin's biggest fan. She has kept in contact with him and let him know how the boys are doing. And I think he very well may end up as an honorary member of this family. But at the end of the day, Austin has, of course, deflected our praise of him. He just continues to say he knows he was there for a reason, and then his training in the Marines really helped him keep a level head and during stressful situations. So it's our privilege and honor to honor Austin today for his bravery and service to our community in a very unique way that we don't ever think we're going to be thrust into, but he answered the call. So Austin, I'll ask you to stand and be acknowledged by the board and staff here today. Thank you, Austin.
Austin, thank you for your service and for your quick thinking. It's amazing. I'm not amazed but just thankful that all of your skills from your military service kicked in, and your personality and character as well. Thank you for your service. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board today? Well, following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session that is open for the public to observe. This meeting is adjourned.